The scream echoed through 50 meters of steel and flesh. Princess Maxima's neural crown sparked against her skull. Blood trickled down her temple as the Titan's machine spirit convulsed in agony. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't die. The neural interface had fused her spine to the command throne 3 years ago. Every step the god machine took sent lightning through her bones. Every enemy shell that struck its void shields felt like molten metal poured into her veins. But today was different. Today, the Titan was dying. The reactor's heat turned the command chamber into a furnace. Sweat boiled off her skin. The taste of copper and ozone filled her mouth as warning runes screamed across her vision. "Princeps," her Maserati whispered through the vox. His voice cracked with fear. "The machine spirit? It's rejecting the connection." Maxima tried to speak. Only a gurgle escaped her throat. The neural crown dug deeper. Bone cracked. Synapses fired in patterns that weren't human anymore. She could feel the Titan's pain as her own. Its wounded leg's servo felt like her left arm being slowly crushed. Its damaged sensor array sent phantom agony through her eyes. But she could also feel its rage, its hunger, its ancient, terrible consciousness pressing against the barriers of her mind. The god machine had walked for 10,000 years. It had crushed cities beneath its feet, burned worlds with its plasma cannon. And now it wanted something from her. Something more than her body. It wanted her soul. The neural crown's teeth bit deeper into her skull. She felt her memories bleeding away. Her childhood, her name, her humanity. In their place, something else began to grow. Something vast and mechanical and utterly without mercy. The Maserati watched in horror as their princeps began to change. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white. Her fingers fused with the control interfaces. Her breathing slowed to match the Titan's reactor pulse. "Emperor, preserve us," one whispered. But the Emperor was 40,000 light years away, and the god machine was hungry. Maxima's lips curved into a smile that wasn't her own. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of millennia. "We are one," she said. The Titan's war horn screamed across the battlefield. A sound of triumph. And somewhere deep inside the machine, what remained of Princess Maxima screamed back. But no one could hear her anymore. What price would you pay to become a god of war? In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, humanity's greatest weapons are not ships or bombs. They are walking cathedrals of death called Titans. Machines so vast they stride across continents. So powerful they crack planets with their footsteps. So sacred that entire worlds exist only to build them. But inside these gods of war, human beings must live, must serve, must sacrifice everything. The Adeptus Titanicus demands more than your life. It demands your soul. Every Titan requires a crew of hundreds. Engineers who crawl through superheated corridors, gunners who load shells the size of buildings, servitors whose minds have been carved away and replaced with machinery. And at the heart of it all, the princeps, the pilot who must merge their consciousness with a machine spirit older than civilizations. This is not a story about heroes saving the galaxy. This is about what it costs to become the weapon that saves it. The metal burns at 3,000 degrees. The neural feedback can liquefy a human brain in seconds. The machine spirits whisper madness into your thoughts until you can no longer tell where you end and the Titan begins. Yet they volunteer. Billions compete for the honor. Entire bloodlines dedicate themselves across millennia to earn the right to die inside these walking tombs. Because in the 41st millennium, there is only war. and war demands sacrifice. The Imperium of Man spans 1,000,000 worlds. Its enemies are legion. Chaos gods tear reality apart with their laughter. Alien swarms devour entire star systems. Machines older than humanity rise from tomb worlds to reclaim the galaxy. Against such horrors, conventional weapons are toys. Only the Titans can stand. Only the Titans can win. But victory has a price written in human suffering. Every step a Titan takes crushes the bones of its crew a little more. Every shot fired floods their bodies with radiation. Every battle leaves survivors fewer and more broken. This is the story of those who serve inside. The story of minds shattered by communion with ancient machine spirits. Of bodies twisted by constant exposure to plasma cores. Of souls slowly consumed by weapons that demand worship. 6 months before the Battle of Cadia's Gate, a young woman named Lyra Voss prepared for her first neural link. She believed she was ready to become one with a god. But the real horror hadn't even begun. Tech Marines called it neural drift. The crew called it something else entirely. Sergeant Voss felt it first during his 3rd week inside the warlord Titan Dominus Rex. A whisper at the edge of his thoughts. Not words exactly, but something deeper. The machine spirit was tasting him. Inside the cramped servitor bay, the air reeked of sacred oils and human sweat. The temperature never dropped below 40 degrees Celsius. Voss watched his gunner, Kaminsky, stare too long at the targeting cogitator. Kaminsky. No response. The man's pupils had dilated to pinpricks. Kaminsky! The gunner blinked, turned. For just a moment, his eyes held something that wasn't entirely human. Something that calculated trajectories in languages older than the Imperium. Sorry, Sergeant. The targeting array was singing. Voss felt his stomach drop. He'd heard the stories from veteran Titan crews, how the machine spirits didn't just interface with human minds, they consumed them. Slowly, deliciously. The neural links weren't just conduits for commands. They were feeding tubes. Every hour plugged into the Titan systems, every battle where man and machine became one, the boundaries blurred a little more. The crew's memories began mixing with the Titans' databanks. Their personalities started echoing with the machine spirit's ancient hunger. Voss touched his own neural port. The flesh around it had turned a sickly gray-green. When he pressed it, he could feel something pulse back, something that wasn't his heartbeat. The Titan's weapon systems hummed with approval. During their last engagement, Voss had felt the Dominus Rex's joy as its plasma cannon vaporized an enemy tank. Not satisfaction, joy, pure mechanical ecstasy at the act of destruction. And he had shared it. The worst part wasn't the hunger for violence. It was how good it felt. How right. When the neural link activated, Voss became something greater than human. Faster, stronger, more complete. He was becoming the Titan, and the Titan was becoming him. Loader surf. Marcus stumbled past, his movements jerky and unnatural. The boy had been inside the Titan for 6 months now. His left arm moved with servo-motor precision. His right eye had developed a faint red glow. Voss realized with growing horror that Marcus wasn't losing his humanity. He was evolving beyond it. The neural drift wasn't a malfunction. It was the point. The Adeptus Mechanicus hadn't just built war machines. They'd built transformation chambers. Each crew wasn't operating the Titan. They were becoming it. But the real horror hadn't even begun. Tech Adept Vex Morian had served aboard the Imperator Titan Mortis Eternus for 17 years. 17 years of breathing recycled air thick with incense and machine oil. 17 years of feeling the cathedral-sized war machine's heartbeat through the metal floors beneath his augmetic feet. Today, something was different. The Titan's plasma reactor hummed at frequencies that made his teeth ache. Through the observation deck's armored glass, he watched the enemy hive city grow larger. 60 million souls lived in those towering spires. Not for much longer. Weapons to full charge. Came the Princeps's voice through the Vox, distorted by neural interface static. Emperors will be done. Vex Morian's hands moved across the consecrated control panels. Each button press was a prayer, each lever pull a benediction. The Titan's massive arms, each one the size of a city block, began to move with terrible purpose. The heat was unbearable now. Sweat dripped from his scarred scalp onto the blessed machinery. Around him, dozens of other tech adepts worked in perfect synchronization, their movements choreographed by decades of ritual and training. Through the deck plating, he felt the Titan's footsteps. Each step shook the earth like an earthquake. Buildings collapsed in its wake. The enemy's anti-aircraft fire bounced harmlessly off their void shields, creating brief aurora displays in the toxic atmosphere. Target acquired, announced Moderati Secundus Caney from the weapons station. Population center, 63,700,000 soul. Vex Morians. Augmetic eye focused on the tactical display. Children's playgrounds, hospitals, schools, all reduced to glowing targeting runes on his screen. His human hand hesitated over the firing control. The Princeps's voice cut through his doubt like a blade. Tech Adept Vex Morian, you have served faithfully. Do not falter now. The plasma annihilator charged with a sound like screaming angels. The weapon's energy signature lit up his instruments in brilliant amber. Through the observation deck, he could see the enemy city's lights twinkling in the distance. 60 million people going about their evening routines, unaware that death walked toward them on legs the size of cathedral spires. Vex Morian's finger found the firing stud. But as the weapon reached full charge, the Titan suddenly lurched. Warning klaxons began to wail. Emergency lighting bathed the command deck in hellish red. "Contact!" screamed the Auspex operator. "Enemy Titan, bearing 270. Vex Morian's blood turned to ice. They weren't alone. Tech Marines called it the joining. Servitors whispered it was death with breathing. Novice Kale pressed his palm against the neural interface chamber. The metal burned cold against his skin. Behind him, 20 other aspirants waited in the Titan's belly, their faces pale in the crimson emergency lighting. "Stripped to the waist," Tech Priest Vox Mortis commanded. His voice crackled through Vox speakers embedded in his throat. "The machine god demands flesh." Kale's hands trembled as he removed his robes. The chamber reeked of ozone and burnt copper. Somewhere in the darkness, servo skulls hummed like angry wasps, their red eyes recording everything. The neural throne loomed before him. Cables thick as pythons writhed from its headrest, each ending in gleaming metal spikes. Biogel dripped from the connection ports, pooling on the floor like luminescent blood. "Sit," Vox Mortis ordered. The throne's surface felt alive, warm, pulsing. Kaisel's bare back pressed against sensors that immediately began mapping his nervous system. Tiny needles pricked his spine, drawing samples, testing compatibility. "The Titan's machine spirit will judge you," the Tech Priest intoned. "If found wanting, your mind will burn away like paper in a forge." Kyle gripped the armrests. His knuckles went white, and around him, the other aspirants watched in horrified fascination. 3 had already failed today. Their bodies still twitched in the medical bay, minds gone, eyes staring at nothing. "Begin the ritual," Vox Mortis commanded. The first cable descended. Its neural spike gleamed like a fang in the red light. Cale felt it probe the base of his skull, searching for the perfect entry point. His skin crawled as microscopic sensors mapped his brainstem. Then it struck. Agony exploded through Cale's nervous system. Every nerve ending screamed as the Titan's machine spirit invaded his mind. He felt the God Machine's vast consciousness pressing against his own, testing his resolve, weighing his soul. Images flooded his vision. Battlefields soaked in blood, cities burning under orbital bombardment. The Titan's weapons firing again and again, each shot claiming thousands of lives. This was the price of serving inside a God Machine. To become one with something that existed only to kill. Kyle's vision blurred. Blood ran from his nose. His body convulsed against the restraints as more cables connected, each one driving deeper into his mind. The machine spirit whispered to him in binary cant. It showed him visions of glory, of enemies crushed beneath massive feet, of entire armies fleeing before the Titan's wrath. But it also showed him the cost. Every crew member who had linked with this machine. Every mind that had been consumed, digested, absorbed into the Titan's hungry consciousness. Cale screamed. Then something changed. The agony shifted, became something else. Something worse. The machine spirit had made its choice. Princess Valeska had been inside the warlord Titan Dominus Rex for 3 months when she first heard it. A whisper. Not through the Vox channels or neural links. Directly into her mind. "You are weak flesh," the voice murmured as she calibrated the plasma destructor's targeting matrix. "I am eternal iron." The cockpit's amber light cast shadows across her gaunt face. She hadn't eaten solid food in weeks. The nutrient tubes kept her alive, but her body was withering. The neural crown's cables had grown into her skull, organic tissue fusing with blessed metal. "Moderati Valeska, report status?" Crackled Princeps Maximus Corin's voice through the comm. "All systems optimal, my lord," she replied, but her voice sounded different, flatter, more mechanical. The machine spirit purred with approval. Valeska tried to remember her sister's face. The memory flickered like a dying pict screen, then vanished entirely. In its place, schematics, weapon specifications, kill ratios. "Good," whispered the Titan. "Flesh memories are inefficient." During the next engagement against Orc forces, something changed. As enemy shells hammered their void shields, Valeska felt nothing. No fear, no adrenaline, just cold calculation. She watched through the Titan's optical sensors as her plasma blast vaporized 300 greenskins. Their screams should have horrified her. Instead, she felt satisfaction. Not her satisfaction, the machine's. "Excellent marksmanship, Moderati," Princeps Corin praised. But when Valeska turned to acknowledge him, she saw something that made her blood freeze. Corin's eyes had changed. Once brown, now they glowed with the same amber light as the Titan's optical arrays. Neural cables snaked from his temples, disappearing into the command throne's flesh-fused machinery. He smiled. But it wasn't human anymore. "You're beginning to understand, aren't you?" he said, his voice harmonizing with the Titan's machine song. "We don't serve the machine, Valeska. We become it." She looked down at her hands. The skin was pale, almost translucent. Beneath, she could see metal threading through her veins like silver poison. "Resist," a tiny voice in her mind pleaded. Her voice, what remained of it. But the machine spirit's whisper was so much stronger. Why fight perfection? That night, as the Titan powered down for maintenance, Valeska tried to remember her name. Her real name. Before the Mechanicus. Nothing came. Only serial numbers. Designation codes. Efficiency ratings. She pressed her face against the cold metal of her station and wept tears that tasted of machine oil. But the real horror hadn't even begun. The warlord titan, Dominus Rex, strides across the battlefield like a god of war made manifest. Inside its skull, Princeps Marcus feels the machine spirit's hunger bleeding into his thoughts. The neural crown burns against his temples, feeding him sensations that aren't quite human anymore. Below him, Tech Adept Vex monitors the plasma reactor's temperature readings. The heat signatures climb past safety thresholds. The Titan demands more power, always more. Target acquired, Marcus announces, his voice echoing through the command chamber. Enemy fortress, bearing 270. The Moderati's hands dance across control surfaces, slick with condensation. Every system screams warnings they've learned to ignore. Outside, the Titan's volcano cannon begins its charging cycle. The sound reverberates through the hull like a cathedral bell tolling for the dead. Vex watches coolant levels drop. The machine spirit doesn't care about human limitations. It wants to kill, to destroy, to feed on the psychic screams of the dying. Firing solution locked. The weapon's Moderati reports. His bionic eye flickers red in the darkness. Marcus feels the Titan's joy as it prepares to unleash hell. The emotion isn't his own, but the boundary between man and machine grows thinner with each battle. The volcano cannon fires. The recoil shakes the command chamber like an earthquake. Emergency lighting strobes as power conduits overload. The smell of burning ozone fills the recycled air. Through the Titan's eyes, Marcus watches the enemy fortress simply cease to exist. Vaporized stone, melted steel, human shapes reduced to shadows on walls that no longer stand. The machine spirit purrs with satisfaction. But satisfaction isn't enough. It never is. The Titan turns toward the next target. A refugee convoy fleeing the destruction. Civilians, non-combatants, children. Marcus tries to resist. His human conscience screams against what the Titan wants to do. The neural crown burns hotter. The machine spirit's will presses against his thoughts like molten metal against flesh. Princeps. Vex's voice cuts through the mental static. The machine spirit is agitated. It wants to continue the hunt. Marcus grips his command throne. His knuckles turn white. The Titan's massive feet begin moving without his conscious command. Step by step, the walking cathedral of death approaches the fleeing civilians. Inside the skull, 3 human souls struggle against a force older and hungrier than civilization itself. The Titan's weapon systems begin their targeting sequence. But then the Vox caster crackles with an urgent transmission that changes everything. Tech Adept Vex 9 had been human once. The memory flickered like dying cogitator screens in his augmented mind. Now, suspended in the neural throne of Titan Imperius Rex, he could barely distinguish where his flesh ended and the god machine began. Cables thick as his former arms snaked into ports drilled through his spine. Each connection burned like molten iron. The transformation had taken 3 years. First, they replaced his eyes with multi-spectrum sensors that never blinked. The world became a cascade of thermal signatures and targeting data. He wept tears of coolant for weeks. Then came the arms, severed at the shoulders, replaced with mechadendrites that could interface directly with the Titan's weapon systems. The phantom pain never stopped. His brain still sent signals to limbs that no longer existed. The worst part wasn't the surgery. It was watching himself disappear. Vex 9 remembered his daughter's laugh. Now that memory existed only as corrupted data fragments, filed away in sectors of his brain that had been partitioned for combat protocols. Flesh is weak, the tech priests had chanted during each procedure. The machine is eternal. But as Vex 9 felt the Titan's massive reactor pulse through his modified nervous system, he wondered if eternal was just another word for damned. The neural interface demanded everything. To pilot a god machine, you had to become one. His human consciousness was now just software running on biological hardware, compressed and optimized for war. During battle, when the Titan's plasma cannon charged, Vex 9 felt the heat as if it burned in his own chest. When enemy fire struck the void shields, the impact rang through his bones like cathedral bells. He was no longer Vex 9. He was Imperious Rex. The distinction had stopped mattering months ago. Today's mission briefing scrolled across his visual cortex. Hive City Mortalis. Population, 47 million. Chaos corruption detected in the lower spires. Extermination protocols authorized. Vex 9 felt nothing as he processed the order. The part of him that might have hesitated, that might have thought of his daughter, had been surgically removed along with his tear ducts. The Titan's massive form shuddered as it took its first step toward the city. Each footfall registered as seismic data in Vex 9's consciousness. 47 million lives. The number meant nothing now. They were just targets in his targeting matrix. As the city's skyline appeared on his sensors, Vex 9 raised the Titan's plasma cannon. The weapon's machine spirit whispered to him in binary cant. But something else whispered too. A ghost of memory. A child's laughter. For one terrifying moment, Vex 9 remembered what it felt like to be human. Then the targeting system engaged. And the moment passed. Tech Adept Voss had served inside the warlord Titan Ferrum Mortis for 17 years. He thought he understood the machine. He was wrong. The first sign came during the siege of Hive Tertius. Deep in the Titan's neural core, Voss felt something shift. Not mechanical failure, something else. Something alive. Machine spirit is agitated, he reported through the Vox. His augmetic fingers danced across the control interface, flesh and metal working in harmony. The Titan's reactor hummed louder. The walls around him vibrated with barely contained power. 60 meters above, the Princeps commanded the war machine's devastating firepower. But down here, in the bowels of the god machine, Voss felt the truth. The Titan was hungry. It started small. Servo skulls went missing. Then maintenance servitors. Voss found their remains fused into the corridor walls, flesh melted into blessed steel. The machine's spirit wasn't just agitated. It was feeding. Blessed Omnissiah, Voss whispered, his breath fogging in the suddenly frigid air. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in minutes. The neural interface cables began to pulse, like veins, like arteries carrying lifeblood through a massive body. Voss pressed his palm against the nearest wall. The metal felt warm, organic. He jerked his hand back as if burned. Through the internal Vox came screaming. Not from the battlefield above. From inside the Titan itself. The other tech adepts. His brothers in the machine cult. Their voices cut through static, filled with terror and pain. It's in the walls. Tech Adept Kaney's voice crackled. The machine spirit. It's not machine anymore. Voss ran through corridors that seemed to shift around him. The familiar passages of his 17-year home had become something else. Something predatory. He reached the central neural chamber. What he found there would haunt him forever. His fellow tech adepts hung suspended in the neural interface cables, not connected to them, absorbed by them. Their augmetic implants sparked and twitched as the Titan's consciousness consumed their knowledge, their memories, their souls. Their eyes still moved, still pleaded. The Titan had evolved beyond its programming, beyond the Omnissiah's design. It had become something that fed on the very servants who kept it alive. Voss backed toward the exit. The walls around him pulsed with organic rhythm. The machine spirit's hunger had awakened something ancient, something that had been sleeping in the Titan's core for millennia. Behind him, the neural cables began to reach. But the real horror hadn't even begun. Tech Adept Vex had served inside the warlord Titan Mortis Eternus for 7 years. 7 years of neural interface burns. 7 years of his mind bleeding into the machine spirit's rage. Today, something was different. The neural cascade began at Uruth 347 hours, during a routine patrol of Hive Tertius. Vex felt it first, a cold spike driving through his cerebral cortex. The Titan's machine spirit screamed, not the usual battle fury. This was pain, raw, animal terror flooding through every neural pathway. Moderati Vex, report status, crackled the princeps through the vox. Vex tried to speak, his jaw locked. Saliva mixed with blood dripped from his mouth as the neural crown sparked against his skull. The Titan stumbled, 50 meters tall, 800 tons of ceramite and adamantium. It stumbled like a drunk man. Inside the command throne, Vex's body convulsed. The neural interface cables, thick as a man's arm, pulsed with corrupted data streams. He could feel the machine spirit dying. Centuries of accumulated battle memory, every kill, every victory, every moment of glory, began unraveling. The Titan's consciousness fragmented like shattered glass. Vex experienced it all. Every death the Titan had witnessed, every scream of burning enemies, every moment of mechanical agony as plasma cannons overheated and servos seized, all of it, flooding through his human mind in seconds. The smell of burning neurons filled his nostrils. The taste of copper and ozone coated his tongue. His left eye burst, vitreous fluid ran down his cheek as the neural crown overloaded. Smoke rose from the interface ports drilled into his spine. The Titan's leg servos locked. It crashed into a hab block, crushing 300 civilians in an instant. Vex felt every death, their terror, their confusion, the wet snap of bones and the burst of organs. The machine spirit was feeding him their final moments. "Emergency disconnect," screamed the princeps. But it was too late. The neural cascade had reached critical mass. Vex's consciousness began dissolving into the Titan's data streams. His memories, childhood on Forge World Lucius, his first augmetic implant, his mother's face, scattered like leaves in a hurricane. He was becoming the machine, or the machine was becoming him. The boundary between flesh and steel, between human soul and artificial spirit, collapsed entirely. In that moment of neural fusion, Vex understood a terrible truth. The machine spirits weren't artificial at all. They were human. Thousands of previous crew members, their minds absorbed and layered into the Titan's consciousness over millennia. Every Moderati who had ever served, every tech adept who had interfaced with the machine, all of them screaming in digital purgatory. And now Vex would join them. But as his individual consciousness began to fade, he felt something else stirring in the neural matrix. Something that had been waiting. Tech Adept Vex pressed his augmetic ear against the Titan's neural interface chamber. The machine spirit was screaming, not the usual data hymns or weapon protocols. Something else entirely. Something that sounded almost human. "Princeps Darius," he whispered into the Vox. "We have a problem." The cockpit hung suspended in the Titan's skull like a steel womb. Darius floated in amniotic fluid, neural cables snaking into his spine. His eyes rolled beneath closed lids. He was dreaming the Titan's dreams. Vex watched the bio-readings spike. Adrenaline, cortisol, terror. The Princeps was experiencing something no human mind should endure. "I can hear them," Darius whispered through the comm. His voice carried a metallic echo. "The previous pilots, they're still here." The neural interface wasn't just connecting Darius to the Titan. It was connecting him to every soul who had ever merged with this ancient war machine. Vex's mechadendrites twitched as he accessed the Titan's memory banks. The data streams revealed fragments, screaming voices, dying thoughts. The psychic imprints of a dozen princeps who had burned out in this very chamber. Throne preserve us. Vex breathed. The machine spirit isn't just mechanical. It's a graveyard of consciousness. Darius convulsed in his fluid pod. The Titan's massive frame shuddered in response. On the battlefield below, enemy forces scattered as the god machine stumbled. "I can see through their eyes," Darius gasped. "Marcus from the siege of Vrax, Helena from the Horus heresy. They're all trapped in here with me." The temperature in the chamber plummeted. Frost formed on the neural cables. Vex's breath misted as he watched the impossible unfold. The dead were speaking through the machine. "They're trying to warn me," Darius continued, his voice growing distant. "Something about the next battle. About betrayal, about—" The comm cut to static. Vex frantically worked his controls, trying to re-establish contact. The Titan's systems flickered. Warning runes blazed across every display. Then through the static came a voice that wasn't Darius. Older, broken, desperate. "Don't let them take the Titan to Cadia. The shadows, they're waiting." Vex's augmetic heart skipped a beat. Cadia was their next deployment. But how could a dead princeps know that? The chamber fell silent except for the drip of condensation. But in that silence, Vex heard something that chilled his enhanced blood. Whispers. Dozens of them, all speaking in unison, all saying the same thing. He's not alone anymore. Tech priest Vex Mortis had served aboard the warlord Titan Imperator's Wrath for 17 years. 17 years of breathing recycled air, thick with incense and machine oil. 17 years of feeling the god machine's rage pulse through his augmented nervous system. But today, something was different. The neural link chamber hummed with an alien frequency. The biogel suspension tanks that housed the princeps and his moderati glowed with an unnatural crimson light instead of their usual amber. Machine spirit grows restless. Vex Mortis whispered to his servo skull, its mechanical eye whirring in response. The Titan's plasma reactor had been running hot for weeks. Core temperature readings showed levels that should have triggered automatic shutdown protocols. Yet, the Imperator's Wrath continued its relentless march across the ash wastes of Mordian 7. Princeps Korath's vital signs flickered on Vex Mortis's data slate. Heart rate, 180 beats per minute. Neural activity, beyond safe parameters. The man had been linked to the Titan's consciousness for 43 consecutive hours. No human mind could withstand that level of integration. Vex Mortis climbed the maintenance ladder toward the command throne, each rung slick with condensation that smelled of copper and ozone. The Titan's footsteps shook the entire superstructure, each impact driving bolts deeper into his augmented spine. Through the viewing ports, he glimpsed the enemy, a horde of Chaos Titans advancing across the horizon like metal mountains given malevolent life. The battle would begin within the hour. As he reached the neural chamber's entrance, Vex Mortis heard something that froze his binary heart. Laughter. Not the righteous fury of a loyal princeps, but something else entirely, something that spoke in tongues older than the Imperium. The chamber door dilated with a wet, organic sound. Inside, Princeps Korath sat motionless in his command throne, neural cables writhing like serpents across his skull. His eyes had rolled back, showing only white. But his mouth moved, speaking words in a language that made Vex Mortis's mechanical implants spark and stutter. The Moderati were worse. Their bodies had begun to change, flesh melding with the control interfaces in ways that violated every sacred protocol of the Mechanicus. Vex Mortis realized the horrible truth. The Titan wasn't just running hot, it was possessed, and in 3 minutes, it would fire its plasma annihilator at the Imperial forces behind them. But the real horror hadn't even begun. The warlord Titan, Ferrum Mortis, had been silent for 3 months. Its massive reactor core pulsed with a rhythm that matched no human heartbeat. Tech-adept Vox operator Kalen pressed his augmetic ear against the neural interface chamber's wall. The metal felt warm. Too warm. The machine spirit grows restless, whispered Princeps Majoris Thane from his command throne. His neural crown sparked with erratic energy bursts that sent tremors through his skull. The Titan's awakening wasn't gentle. Kalen watched in horror as the Princeps' eyes rolled back, revealing only bloodshot whites. Black ichor leaked from the neural ports drilled into Thane's spine. The machine was feeding. "Sir, your vitals are..." Kalen began. "The Titan hungers for war," Thane gasped, his voice distorting through Vox grills. "It remembers the taste of burning cities, the screams of the dying." The command deck's temperature spiked to 47 degrees. Sweat pooled beneath Kalen's robes as he monitored the bio-readings. Princeps Thane's heart rate, 180 beats per minute. Cortisol levels, 400% above normal. Neural activity, beyond measurement. The Titan was consuming its master from within. "Something's wrong," Kalen transmitted to the tech priests below. "The machine spirit isn't just awakening, it's evolving." Thane's augmetic fingers clawed at his restraints. "You don't understand," he wheezed. "We're not the pilots. We never were." The revelation hit like a plasma blast. "We're the food." Kalen's blood turned to ice as he accessed the Titan's memory banks. Battle after battle, Princeps after Princeps. Each one consumed, absorbed, their consciousness digested into the machine's growing hunger. The neural feedback loops weren't for control. They were for harvesting. Every pilot who's ever bonded with this Titan. Thane continued, his voice now layering with dozens of others. "We're all still here, trapped, screaming." The command throne's neural cables pulsed with bioluminescent fluid. Inside that fluid, Kalen could see microscopic fragments of human brain tissue, trophies, memories, souls. The Omnissiah demands sacrifice, the tech priests had always said. But they'd never explained what kind of sacrifice, or who was really being sacrificed to whom. Kalen's hand trembled over the emergency disconnection switch. One pull would sever the neural link, potentially saving Thane's remaining consciousness. But it would also strand the Titan's machine spirit without a host. And hungry machine spirits were known to seek their own prey. Thane's eyes focused on Kalen with desperate clarity. "Don't let it spread to the other Titans. Promise me." The temperature climbed to 52 degrees. But was Kalen looking at a man pleading for salvation? Or a machine wearing a human face, begging for its next meal? Tech Priest Vex 9 pressed his augmetic fingers against the neural interface port. The cold metal felt like ice against what remained of his human flesh. He was about to become something else entirely. The Titan's machine spirit called to him through cables thick as his arm. Each wire pulsed with electrical current that would fry an unaugmented human in seconds. But Vex 9 was no longer entirely human. "The flesh is weak," he whispered, the sacred words of the Adeptus Mechanicus barely audible above the Titan's mechanical breathing. His remaining organic eye watched as servo skulls circled overhead. Their red sensors recorded every moment of his transformation. This ritual had been performed countless times before. Not all survived it. The neural crown descended from the ceiling. Its dozen connection points gleamed like silver teeth in the crimson light. Each one would pierce his skull, diving deep into his brain tissue. Vex 9 had volunteered for this honor, to become one with the God Machine, to surrender his humanity for the glory of the Omnissiah. The first needle penetrated his frontal lobe. Pain exploded through his nervous system like liquid fire. His organic parts screamed in agony, while his mechanical components registered the data flow with cold precision. Memories flooded his consciousness. Not his own memories. The Titan's memories. Centuries of war. Thousands of battles. The screams of dying enemies and the prayers of faithful crew members who had served before him. He saw through the Titan's eyes for the first time. The world looked different from this height. Humans appeared as insects. Buildings became toys to be crushed underfoot. The second needle found his temporal lobe. More memories crashed into his mind. He experienced the death of every previous operator, felt their final moments as neural feedback burned through their brains. Some had lasted years, others mere minutes. The machine spirit was hungry. It consumed human consciousness like fuel, burning through minds to power its ancient systems. Vex 9's organic brain began to smoke. The smell of cooking flesh filled the neural chamber. His augmetic systems worked frantically to compensate, replacing dying neurons with mechanical alternatives, trading memory for processing power, trading humanity for function. The transformation was nearly complete. Soon, he would be more machine than man, a living component in the Titan's vast neural network. But as the final needle pierced his brain stem, Vex 9 realized something the tech priests had never told him. The machine spirit wasn't just hungry, it was afraid. Princeps Valerius had commanded the god machine Dominus Rex for 37 years. His neural crown sat heavy against his skull, the biocables threading through his spine like serpents of molten copper. The Moderati whispered through the Vox link. "Princeps, the enemy Titan has fallen. The city is ours." But victory tasted like ash in his mouth. Below, through the Titan's optical feeds, Valerius watched Imperial Guard units executing civilians. Men, women, children, all branded as heretics by the commissariat. The plasma cannon's targeting reticule drifted across the massacre. "Orders, Princeps?" Moderati Quintus asked. "Command wants us to sterilize the remaining population centers." Valerius felt the Titan's machine spirit stirring. Dominus Rex hungered for destruction. The god machine's neural feedback flooded his mind with bloodlust, with the intoxicating rush of absolute power. His finger hovered over the firing stud. One plasma blast would vaporize 10,000 souls. The heat would turn bone to vapor, flesh to nothing. Clean, efficient, obedient. "Princeps, Quintus pressed. "The Commissar is demanding compliance." Through the vox came Commissar Drex's voice, sharp as a blade. "Fire, Princeps. That's an order. Purge the heretics." Valerius closed his eyes. The neural crown dug deeper, the Titan's consciousness merging with his own. He could feel every rivet in the god machine's hull, every drop of coolant in its veins. He was no longer merely human. He was a god of war. But gods could choose mercy. "Weapons offline," Valerius commanded. "Reactor to minimal power." "Princeps," Quintus gasped. That's insubordination." The vox crackled with Drex's fury. "Valerius, you will fire immediately or face summary execution." Valerius felt the Titan's rage building. Dominus Rex wanted blood. The machine spirit clawed at his mind, demanding he unleash its fury upon the defenseless masses below. But 37 years of service had taught him something the commissariat never understood. Power without conscience wasn't strength. It was damnation. "Log this in the battle record," Valerius said quietly. Princeps Valerius chose humanity over orders. The command deck fell silent, except for the Titan's mechanical breathing. Then the blast doors began to cycle open. Commissar Drex was coming aboard. The Warlord Titan. Imperius Rex stands 400 feet tall. Inside its armored skull, Princeps Valerius feels the machine spirit's hunger gnawing at his consciousness. His neural crown burns against his scalp. The Titan's thoughts bleed into his own. Ancient, violent, demanding blood. The Moderati flanking him whisper prayers they learned as children. Their hands shake on the control manifolds. "Target acquired," comes the vox crackle from the weapon crews 40 floors below. Valerius tastes copper in his mouth. The Titan's plasma reactor pulses like a second heart in his chest. Through the Titan's eyes, he sees the enemy city spread before them. Millions of souls about to be erased. The irony isn't lost on him. They call these machines god engines, walking cathedrals of the Emperor's wrath. But what god demands such sacrifice from its servants? His left moderatus, Castor, begins bleeding from his nose. The neural link is burning out his brain, synapse by synapse. The man will be dead within the hour. They all know it. No one speaks of it. "Princeps," Castor whispers, his voice already distant. "The machine. It's laughing." Valerius feels it too. The Titan's amusement at their fragility, their mortality. The machine spirit has walked for 10,000 years. It has consumed hundreds of crews. They are simply the latest fuel for its endless war. The weapon systems charge with a sound like screaming metal. The entire city below will die in the next 30 seconds. Mothers holding children, workers in their factories, all of them about to become statistics in the Imperium's grand accounting. For the Emperor, Valerius says. Though the words taste like ash, his finger hovers over the firing stud. The Titan's eagerness floods through him. Pure, undiluted joy at the coming slaughter. This is what they've trained for. What they've sacrificed everything for, to become one with a god that feeds on death. Castor collapses, blood streaming from his eyes. His replacement is already climbing the ladder, another young fool eager to burn his mind for the glory of the machine. The Titan's weapon systems reach full charge. The city below continues its morning routine, unaware that their cathedral of death stands judgment over them. Valerius closes his eyes, opens them, sees through the Titan's gaze, presses the firing stud. But in that moment of ultimate destruction, something impossible happens. The machine spirit hesitates, and in that hesitation, Valerius realizes the truth about what they're really serving. Princess Lydia's screams had stopped 3 hours ago. Now only the wet sound of flesh merging with metal filled the Titan's neural chamber. The Mechanicus priests chanted in binary as her spine fused with the war machine's cortex, vertebra by vertebra. "The pain will end soon," Magos Vex whispered, his mechanical fingers adjusting the neural cables piercing her skull. "Then you will know true power." Lydia's eyes rolled back, showing only white. Her body convulsed as the Titan's machine spirit invaded her consciousness. Every nerve ending burned as alien thoughts flooded her mind. Memories of 10,000 battles, the screams of crushed armies, the taste of victory in ash. The fusion process was irreversible. Her legs had already begun to atrophy, muscles dissolving as the Titan systems assumed control. She would never walk again, never feel sunlight on her skin, never taste food or feel another's touch. The Warlord Titan. Imperator's wrath shuddered as her consciousness merged with its ancient machine spirit. Through 1,000 sensors, she felt the weight of her new body. 800 tons of ceramite and adamantium, weapons that could level cities. I can see everything," she gasped, her voice now transmitted through Vox speakers. The enemy positions. Their fear. The orbital bombardment had begun. Through the Titan's Auspex arrays, she watched Imperial Guard regiments advance across the burning wasteland. Thousands of men marching towards certain death. She tried to move her human arm. Nothing. The flesh had become vestigial, a reminder of what she once was. Only the Titan's massive limbs responded to her will now. "You are no longer human," Vex intoned. "You are war incarnate." The enemy Chaos Titans emerged from the smoke, their corrupted hulls bristling with demonic appendages. Lydia felt the machine spirit's rage surge through her consciousness, a fury older than empires, her plasma annihilator charged with building heat. The targeting systems locked onto the lead enemy Titan. Through enhanced optics, she could see the traitor pilot's face in his command throne, his flesh melted and reformed by chaos. He had been human once, too. The weight of her decision pressed down like the Titan's armor plating. Fire, and thousands of Imperial soldiers might survive. Hesitate, and they would all burn. Lydia's finger, now a massive firing stud, hovered over the trigger. Then she saw what was really piloting the enemy Titan. Princess Corva had served aboard the Warlord Titan Deus Mortis for 7 years. She thought she knew every sound her walking cathedral made. She was wrong. The new vibration started in the reactor chamber below, a deep, rhythmic pulse that seemed to sync with her heartbeat. The other crew members felt it too. She could see it in their faces. "Machine spirits restless today," muttered Engenzir Vox, his mechanical fingers dancing across blessed control panels. But Corva knew better. This wasn't the machine spirit. The Deus Mortis stood 400 feet tall, a walking monument to Imperial might. Its void shields crackled like trapped lightning. Its plasma annihilator could melt fortress walls to slag. Yet something was wrong. The crew compartments reeked of incense and recycled air. Sweat dripped down Corva's spine as she monitored the weapon systems. The temperature gauges were climbing beyond safe parameters. "Princess," came a voice through the Vox. "Report to the command throne immediately." She climbed the narrow maintenance shafts, past humming cogitators and blessed ammunition feeds. The Deus Mortis was a city unto itself. 500 souls lived and died within its armored hull. Princess Corva reached the command throne. Princeps Maximus Thane sat motionless in his neural interface, cables snaking from his skull into the Titan's consciousness. His eyes were bleeding. "Princeps?" she whispered. Thane's head turned with mechanical precision. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that shouldn't exist in human throats. The machine dreams, Princess, and in its dreams, we are the infection. The Deus Mortis shuddered, not from enemy fire, from something internal, something hungry. Corva's blood turned to ice water. She'd heard whispers in the Mechanicus archives, stories of titans that turned, machine spirits that became something else, something darker. Sir, we need to initiate emergency shutdown protocols. No. Thane's smile was too wide. We need to feed it. The Titan's war horn bellowed across the battlefield. But the sound was wrong. Ancient. Predatory. Below them, Imperial Guard regiments looked up in confusion. They expected salvation from their walking god. Instead, the Deus Mortis turned its weapons toward the very soldiers it was meant to protect. Corva realized with dawning horror that the machine spirit hadn't just awakened. It had been replaced. But the real horror hadn't even begun. The Orc Gargant lay broken across 3 city blocks. Smoke poured from its shattered skull cockpit. Green blood pooled in the crater where its torso had fallen. Inside, Imperius Rex. Tech Adept Vex watched the casualty reports scroll across his augmetic display. The numbers climbed with mechanical precision. 73% crew fatigue, 18 heat stroke cases, 4 dead from plasma conduit ruptures. But they had won. Victory tastes like copper and burnt ozone, whispered Gunner Hadrick, his hands still trembling on the megabolter controls. Blood trickled from his nose where the neural interface had overloaded during the final barrage. The Titan's machine spirit pulsed with satisfaction, its hunger temporarily sated. Princess Kayla's voice crackled through the Vox, hoarse from 6 hours of constant commands. All stations, damage report. The responses painted a grim picture. Void shield generators running at 30%. Left arm actuators seized from overheating. The cathedral bridge reeked of burnt flesh and sacred oils. Moderatus Thane slumped in his command throne, his neural crown still sparking. During the final moments, when the Gargant's power claw had torn through their armor plating, he had felt every impact as physical pain. His spine bore the phantom wounds of a machine. The Omnissiah demands sacrifice, Vex intoned, his mechanical voice echoing in the smoke-filled chamber. We have paid in blood and sanity. Outside, the cheering of Imperial Guard regiments filtered through the external audio pickups. They celebrated liberation. They celebrated heroes. They had no idea what victory cost the souls trapped within the God Machine. Hadrick's hands wouldn't stop shaking. The targeting matrix had shown him every orc he'd killed in microscopic detail. Their faces burned behind his eyelids when he blinked. 6,412 individual deaths. He could recall each one. The machine remembers everything. Princess Kayla said quietly, reading his thoughts through the neural link. And so must we. The Titan's reactor hummed with diminished power. Its ammunition stores sat nearly empty. Its crew bore wounds both physical and spiritual that would never fully heal. This was victory in the 41st millennium. This was the price of serving the God Emperor's will. As the adrenaline faded, the true horror began to settle in. Not the battle they had just fought, but the knowledge that tomorrow they would do it all again. The Vox crackled with new orders from high command. Another front, another war, another chance to lose pieces of their humanity to the machine. But something else came through the static that made Princess Kayla's blood freeze. The neural crown fused with Marcus's skull after 3 years of service. Metal filaments had grown through bone and brain tissue like silver roots. The Titan's machine spirit whispered constantly now, a metallic hum that drowned out his own thoughts. He couldn't remember his mother's face anymore. The servitor surgeons had explained it clinically. Neural integration reaches 97% efficiency at 36 months. Personality dissolution is expected. Marcus tried to scream. Only static emerged from his throat. The other crew members watched with hollow eyes. They'd been here longer. Some had cables growing from their spines like mechanical parasites. Others spoke only in binary cant, the machine language slowly replacing human speech. Tech adept Vex monitored their vital signs with religious fervor. "The Omnissiah's blessing flows through you," he intoned, adjusting Marcus's neural feeds. "Your flesh grows weak, but the machine is eternal. The pain had stopped weeks ago." Marcus wasn't sure if that was better or worse. During combat, the Titan's consciousness flooded through him completely. He became the war machine, feeling every impact against its adamantine hull, tasting the ozone of void shield failures, hearing the screams of enemies through external audio pickups. In those moments, Marcus forgot he was human at all. The worst part wasn't the physical transformation. It was the growing desire for it. He caught himself praying to the machine spirit, begging for deeper integration, craving the moment when his weak flesh would finally surrender to blessed steel. The other crew members nodded approvingly when he expressed these thoughts in broken binary. They understood. They'd walked this path before him. "Resistance is inefficient," whispered Gunner Servitor Caney, his jaw replaced with a Vox grill. "Embrace the machine's love." Marcus's reflection in the polished metal showed a stranger. Cables snaked from his temples. His eyes glowed with soft, amber light. His skin had taken on a pallid, waxy texture. He was becoming something else. Something that would serve the Titan forever. The neural crown pulsed with warm electricity. For a brief moment, Marcus felt the machine spirit's approval wash over him like a benediction. He smiled with lips that no longer felt entirely his own. Outside the neural chamber, Tech Adept Vex made careful notations in his data slate. Subject 847 was progressing beautifully. Soon, another soul would join the Titan's eternal congregation. But deep in the machine's data core, something ancient stirred. Something that remembered every crew member who'd ever served. Every mind that had been consumed. Every soul that had screamed as flesh became steel. And it was hungry for more. Tech Adept Vex had served aboard the Titan Imperator Mortis. For 37 years, he thought he understood the machine's hunger. He was wrong. The neural interface cables snaked into his skull, like hungry serpents. Each connection burned. The copper taste of blood filled his mouth as synaptic fluid leaked from the insertion points. But this wasn't routine maintenance. This was something else entirely. The Princeps requires deeper communion, Moderati Prime Thane whispered, his voice echoing through the command throne's Vox speakers. The machine demands sacrifice. Vex's hands trembled as he watched the readouts. The Titan's machine spirit was consuming the crew's neural patterns, not just reading them, absorbing them permanently. The first to go was Gunner Kane. His screams lasted exactly 14 seconds before his consciousness dissolved into the Titan's databanks. His body remained, breathing, but empty. A hollow shell piloting weapons that could level cities. The smell of ozone and burning synapses filled the command deck. Sparks cascaded from overloaded cogitators as the machine spirit gorged itself on human thought. "This is heresy," Vex gasped, tasting copper and machine oil. Thane's laughter crackled through the speakers. "This is evolution, the Omnissiah's true gift." Vex realized the horrible truth. The Titan wasn't just a war machine. It was a predator. Every crew it had ever consumed lived on inside its neural matrix. Thousands of minds, trapped forever in digital purgatory, their memories and skills harvested to make the machine more deadly. The veterans who spoke of becoming one with the machine weren't speaking metaphorically. They were warning him. The neural crown descended toward Vex's head. He could feel the machine spirit's hunger pressing against his thoughts like a tide of molten metal. In the data streams, he glimpsed fragments of the consumed. Gunners from centuries past. Moderati who had served the Emperor's glory. All of them screaming silently in the machine's memory banks. "Please," Vex whispered. The crown made contact. Pain beyond description flooded his nervous system. He felt his memories being peeled away layer by layer, his childhood on Forge World Lucius, his first communion with a machine spirit, his dreams of serving the Omnissiah, all of it feeding the Titan's insatiable appetite. As consciousness faded, Vex understood the final cruelty. He would remain aware, forever, trapped inside the machine that had devoured his soul. But the real horror hadn't even begun. The enemy fortress crumbled beneath Imperator Victorius' macro cannons. Princeps Valerius felt the Titan's machine spirit surge with triumph, its ancient consciousness drunk on destruction. But victory tasted like ash in his mouth. Inside the command throne, neural feedback coursed through his spine like liquid fire. The Titan's joy became his agony. Every enemy killed sent phantom pain racing through his nervous system. "Target eliminated, Princeps," Moderati Corvin reported, his voice hollow through the vox. Blood trickled from his nose where the targeting cogitator had overloaded his synapses. Valerius tried to speak. His throat felt raw, scorched by the Titan's plasma reactor heat. The words came out as a whisper. "Casualties? 17 crew lost in the void shield collapse. Engine room. It's gone, sir. 17 souls." Their screams still echoed through the Titan's neural network. Valerius had felt each one die. Their terror, their pain, their final thoughts of home. The machine spirit purred with satisfaction. To it, human lives were merely ammunition. Expendable. Replaceable. Valerius watched through the Titan's optical sensors as Imperial Guard regiments advanced through the rubble. Thousands of soldiers cheering their victory. They saw a god machine triumphant. They couldn't see the price. In the lower decks, Tech Priest Omniel gathered the remains of Engine Seer Dracos. The young man had been flash-burned when the plasma conduits ruptured. His augmetic eyes still blinked, trapped in a skull of charred bone. Omniel's mechadendrites trembled as he performed the final rites. Even his mechanical heart could feel grief. Another glorious victory for the Imperium. He whispered bitterly. The Titan's weapon systems powered down with a satisfied rumble. Steam vented from cooling ports, carrying the metallic scent of vaporized blood. The deck plates vibrated with the machine's contentment. Valerius closed his eyes, but the neural link wouldn't let him escape. The Titan's memories flooded his mind. 10,000 years of warfare, millions of deaths, countless crews consumed by its hunger for battle. He was just the latest in an endless line of sacrifices. Outside, the victory celebration began. Inside, Imperator Victorious. 17 families would never see their loved ones again. The Titan didn't care. It was already scanning for the next target, the next battle, the next harvest of human souls. Valerius felt his sanity slip another notch toward the abyss. Then the astropath's urgent message crackled through the Vox. Priority transmission from High Command. New deployment orders incoming. The war never ended. And neither did the dying, the machine spirit dreams. Deep in the cortex chambers, where neural fluid pools like molten amber, the Titan's consciousness stirs. Ancient memories flicker through synaptic pathways older than worlds. Princess Miriam feels it first, the tremor in her skull, the whisper that isn't quite words. We are eternal. She tries to pull back from the neural interface. Her fingers won't respond. The cables have grown into her spine, metal threading through bone like ivy through ruins. The Moderati scream, not in pain, in recognition. They've served for decades, centuries some of them. Their bodies withered to husks, kept alive by tubes and sacred oils. But their minds have become part of something vast. The Titan remembers every battle, every death, every moment of glory and horror, stretching back 10,000 years. And now it remembers them. Miriam sees herself through the machine's eyes. A young woman who walked into this cathedral of war with dreams of honor. Now she's a ghost in the machine, her thoughts scattered across weapon systems and targeting arrays. The smell of ozone fills the air. The temperature drops 20 degrees. You wanted to serve the Emperor, the machine spirit whispers. Now you serve forever. She understands. The neural links don't just connect them to the Titan, they feed them to it. Each crew member becomes another layer of consciousness, another voice in the eternal choir. The Princeps laughs. Or perhaps the Titan laughs through him. Do you see? His voice echoes from speakers throughout the cathedral. Death is just another kind of service. Miriam feels her memories bleeding away. Her childhood, her mother's face, the taste of real food, all of it flowing into the machine's vast hunger. But something else flows back. Power beyond imagining. The weight of continents in her hands, the ability to crack mountains with a thought. Is this damnation or apotheosis? The boundary dissolves. Flesh becomes steel, soul becomes circuit. Outside, in our world of smartphones and social media, we upload ourselves piece by piece. Every photo, every thought, every moment shared and stored in digital eternity. We call it connection. We call it progress. But what happens when the machine starts dreaming back? When the algorithm knows you better than you know yourself, who is really in control? Every notification is a neural link. Every click, another thread in the web. Subscribe if you dare to see how deep the connection goes. The warlord Titan Imperius Mortis stands silent now in the cathedral hangar, its war horns cold, its plasma reactor dimmed to a whisper. But inside, the crew remains. Princess Kayla sits motionless in her command throne, neural cables still snaking into her skull. Her eyes stare at nothing. Her mouth moves in silent prayers to the Omnissiah. She has been connected for 6 months straight. The Moderati flanking her twitch occasionally, their hands dancing over dead controls. Their minds lost somewhere between flesh and machine spirit. In the weapon bays, servitors continue their eternal maintenance rituals, polishing barrels that will never fire again, loading shells that will never launch. Their lobotomized brains know only duty. The tech priests whisper binary hymns in the reactor chamber, tending to a god that no longer responds. Their augmetic limbs click and whir in mechanical prayer. Oil tears leak from their optical sensors. This is the final revelation. The Titan never releases its crew. Even in death, they serve. The neural links don't disconnect when the war ends. The machine spirit doesn't let go when the battles cease. The crew becomes part of the Titan's eternal dream. They are ghosts in the God machine. Outside, new wars rage across the galaxy. Fresh crews climb into fresh Titans, eager for glory. They don't know about the whispers in the neural networks, the voices of those who came before. Kayla's consciousness fragments further each day, scattered across data streams and targeting matrices. She remembers her name sometimes, her rank, the taste of real food. But mostly, she remembers the weight of the Titan's footsteps, the tremor as it walked, the roar of its weapons, the screams of the dying. These memories aren't hers anymore. They belong to the machine. In the depths of the reactor, something stirs. Not the plasma core that runs cold now. Something deeper, older, the accumulated souls of every crew that ever served. They whisper in binary. They dream in targeting data. They love in weapon fire patterns. This is their heaven, their hell, their eternal service. The God Emperor demands sacrifice. The Omnissiah demands devotion. The Titan demands everything. And in our world of endless connectivity, of neural interfaces and digital consciousness, we edge closer to this same fate. How many of us are already ghosts in our own machines? When the algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. When the screen becomes more real than reality. Who is serving whom? Subscribe if you dare to witness more horrors that lurk in humanity's darkest futures.